Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Insert the music here. Insert the music here. All right. Good evening and welcome to Merriwether's World, the little blue thing behind me. I am your host, Dr. Mark Merriwether Vorderbruggen, coming to you live from the moon. Pretty cool, pretty cool, pretty cool. All right, so those of you who may not be familiar with me, like I said, Dr. Mark Merriwether Vorderbruggen, creator of the Foraging Texas. Oops. No, add to the stream. There we go. Oh, hey, Brandon. I guess you're in. Yeah. So the Foraging Texas website, Idiot's Guide Foraging, and assorted other foraging stuff. So, oops, I need to get my mouse over here. Hit return. Oh, hey, Carrie's here. Good evening. All right. So, some housekeeping stuff. There's really only one class. No, let's see. Stupid Google taking ad space. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I got two classes yet this year. On December 5th, I'll be up near Dallas in Royce City. And then on December 19th, I will be out at Spoke Hollow, which is just west of Austin, kind of heading towards San Marcos. So yeah, if you want some live in-person foraging type classes, those are the place to go. Follow the links on the Foraging Texas website. All right, and as usual, and we're just going to bring you in, Brandon, because what the hey, you're awesome, yeah. So we'll keep you there. All right. As usual, I'm going to intersperse the sponsors throughout the show, thereby forcing you to sit through the commercials. So, all right, cool. So, let's see. Oh, pointing over here. So, with me tonight is the ever popular Professor Brandon Laurie, a man of many, many, many talents, from brewing to zombie fighting to making his own bow and arrows and camping and woo. Okay, you're drinking some of your own brew there, dude. Awesome, awesome. But first and foremost, a scientist of who I have a great amount of respect for, and it's got we kind of mesh. There are some places where we don't mesh, but there are places where we do mesh, and we from the science point of view, we can mesh. So we thought tonight we would share with you some of the books that were instrumental in our understanding of the universe, things that we've read throughout time and space, I guess, if you want to go there. So these are not books you need to be a chemist or a biologist or anything like that. These are written for the layperson type thing, but they are so good and so clear that I wanted to share them with you tonight. Okay, so without further ado, we are going to jump right in with, I thought I'd start with Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, specifically because this is the best book I've ever found for understanding the principles of the scientific method for exploration of a problem. I do a lot of mentoring, and this is one of the things I make sure everyone reads. Okay, and just to point out, I'm the type that folds my pages. I'm a bad person like that. But here, I'm going to actually read something to you. And this is a part why it's so important and what's going on here when you hear about the scientific method. The real purpose of scientific method is to make sure nature hasn't misled you into thinking you know something you don't actually know. There's not a mechanic or a scientist or technician alive who hasn't suffered from one so much that he has not instinctively on guard. That's the main reason why so much scientific and mechanical information sounds so dull and so cautious. If you get careless or go romanticizing scientific information, giving it a flourish here or there, nature will soon make a complete fool out of you. So, truer words were never spoken in the realm of science. So the scientific method, it's. I'm going to hog a little more time here.
Sure.
I want to read this here. So the logical statements entered into a notebook are broken down into 6 categories. So this is how you keep a scientific notebook. 1, statement of the problem. 2, hypothesis as to the cause of the problem. 3, experiments designed to teach each hypothesis. 4, predicted results of the experiments. 5, observed results of the experiments. And 6, conclusions of the results of the experiments. Not the sort of thing you would think you'd encounter in a book called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, but truly, truly, if you want to be a scientist or you know someone who wants to be a scientist, get them this book.
Yeah.
Okay. And because Brandon and I make money off these things, we're putting up Amazon posts, and hopefully you will decide, hey, this is cool. I want to get this for so-and-so for Christmas. And so if you use these links, Brandon and I will get money. So, okay, take it, Brandon.
I was going to add, there's a 7th part to that, and that is have a beer when you're done going through all of that stuff. Because it is just that, well, not done, but when you go through the scientific method, the last step is have a beer, right?
Or mead, or wine,
or whatever, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know, as I was telling you before we got started, I haven't finished that book. It's one of the ones that I've picked up and put down and picked up and put down, and I know I need to finish it. I really do. But you know, it's just from what I know of it, my father-in-law has read it. It's exactly what you say it is in terms of like you don't expect to find the scientific method in there, but you soon realize it's everywhere. Like it's just problem solving, right? Just we don't call it that. It's a kind of different framework, but it's the exact same thing. So yeah, I think that's a great one.
Yep.
I wanted to start off with one that I had just sent you because it clicked in my brain. I was like, I can't believe I forgot to put this on the list. But it's called, and I have a physical copy of this one, Land of Bears and Honey, A Natural History of East Texas. And I've read this book, I think about 3 times already. And it's a really fascinating book because I'm from East Texas. And so for me, it was really cool to kind of see or really, you know, read some of these journals that people would write as they came to Texas and looked at the flora and the fauna. And then you kind of fast forward to today, and we don't see those things anymore. So there's some accounts in here of the red wolf that they would constantly see or hear, or a black bear that they would go hunting. Well, we don't have that anymore. And so it was really interesting to me, and one of those books that when I read it, it made me understand all the stuff that I had kind of learned, like how things have changed. But to hear it in people's own words and from that time period, instead of from just a scientific viewpoint, to hear that, it was really kind of eye-opening, and it really helped me just kind of connect back to the areas. Because I mean, it talks about areas like Jasper, Woodville kind of area, different. It talks about some of the counties in central Texas. And it's just kind of cool because, you know, we've all ran those roads and we see what it's like now, but to get an actual account of what it used to be is a fascinating book. So one of the things that I think is important going forward in any type of endeavor is to know where you came from, you know, how things were versus how things have changed, especially from that environmental viewpoint. So I highly recommend this to anybody that lives in the area of East Texas, because a lot of the places you're like, oh, I've driven by there, or I live in that same county. It's just a great book. Like I said, I've read it like 3 times already. It's really good.
So did you hear the news? It was probably like a year ago. They actually found some red wolves in Galveston.
Yeah, they had found some genes in some of the coyotes, and so there's been some intermixing. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Okay. Very neat. All right. So my next one is going to tie in perfect. We didn't talk really beforehand. We sent the list of books back and forth, but so A Sand County Almanac by Aldo Leopold. He was the starter at the Sierra Club, or I can't remember.
Something else. Sierra Club, I think, was either.
Yeah. Anyway, so this
Intro.
is the Essays on Conservation from Round River. And what I love about this is this book explains exactly, well, maybe not exactly, but gives a good overview of the changes that Brandon was just talking about as far as why. When we did this to the ecosystem, that happened. And then when that happened, we ended up having to do this. And because we did this, then that happened. And so that chain of events over the course of a time. Those of you, when I posted my deer picture a few weeks ago, and I mentioned when you remove the wolf, you have to become the wolf. It's that comes from this book, that when humans change the ecosystem, they are then responsible for the ecosystem. And if things start going out of control, one of the things we have to do is step in and take control again. But there's all sorts of really other just fascinating poetry. I mean, it's not true poetry, but the visual pictures he's able to create in your head is astounding. But just understanding the big web of life, from the smallest weed to the birds to the trees and everything, and how they all interact. And again, like I said, when you start tugging on one of those threads, pulling something out, what happens next? It is not a fear-mongering book or anything like that. It's just observations and how things changed and the effects humans had, good and bad. But just clear-eyed, honest, and just a dude saying, hey, this is what I saw. Kind of like the East Texas one.
Yeah.
And-
Leopold, he was a forester. And so, I mean, he was all about, we need to have access to those resources, but he very much understood exactly what you're saying, that if you take too much, that changes the whole game.
Yeah.
And man, it's just a beautiful book. I mean, there's part of it that I think romanticizes it a little bit, but there's also just, it's facts. This is what I've seen and what we know. Yeah, man, it's such a great book. It
Yeah.
really is.
Like you mentioned, with the talking about, he understands humans need to spend that time in the wild. It's so genetically part of us, but the more and more people actually doing that, the more damaged the environment becomes, and trying to find that balance. And in the end, he says, I don't know where that balance is.
Yeah.
But somehow, something.
Yeah, it's a great piece of work, man. It's just, I can't say enough good things about it. Yeah. So
On a cold winter night in front of a fireplace with a thing of hot chocolate, reading it, it's just, yeah.
All right, let me see. Let's see what I've got on my list over
Can
here.
I ask you to
Sure.
do one? Okay, Speaker of the Dead by Orson Scott Card.
Okay.
When I saw that you didn't have the author down, I thought, wait, is that Orson Scott Card? And then, so I think I have some ideas where you're going to go with this, but I'm looking forward to hearing you talk about it.
So I don't have the physical copy because this is one of those where, because I commute, everything just switched to audiobook for me. So I have a lot of audiobooks. So Speaker for the Dead, for those of you that are not familiar with it, is the second book in the Ender series. So if you watch Ender's Game, it takes that same character and we see them in the next book. And so without giving too much away, there we go. Without giving too much away, the thing that this book struck me when I was a young man reading it. So I read it when I was in college and I was finishing up biology, and I'd read this book, and I've reread it since then, and it didn't have as much of an impact because I've learned so much since then. But here's what happened for me. Reading that book really made me think about how we define life, how we define sentient life, and what ethics we apply to that. And so reading that, it really, discussing like communication, because we can't communicate with something, we value that less, sort of thing. But if it has sentience enough that we can communicate with it. And so it really got me in this philosophical headspace, and in terms of defining where we put things on the hierarchy of nature. And for me, being a biologist, environmental scientist, it's in this framework where we all have to determine what values this has, how much we're willing to take of this. Is it okay to do this? Is it not okay to do this? And so that book for me, man, it was just it was one of those self-reflection, eye-opening books that I really had to kind of sit down and just think about. Wow, I mean, it's a great story. It's a fun story. I love. I depending on which day you ask, I might actually like Speaker for the Dead better than Ender's Game.
Mm.
But yeah, so that's why I decided to put that book on here, is because you can find these philosophical questions
Yep.
that can apply to science in a lot of science fiction, which is why it's called science fiction. And so I read tons of sci-fi and fantasy, and I'm constantly applying stuff to kind of the actual world, and it gives me pause and think about things. So that's why I threw that one on here. Was that what you thought I was going to answer?
I kind of thought so. Yeah, the whole communication thing, and if we can't speak to it, can we truly believe it's intelligent?
Yeah.
Yeah. And like fungus.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm pretty sure fungus is slowly thinking fungal dreams.
It's wild.
There's no way for us to communicate with it, so it's on its own. But yeah, cool. Okay. Just to go sideways for a second, have you read the Bean series too? When they retell the.
No, my brother-in-law has read it, and he's like, "You have to read it. It's so good." So it's on the list.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Next one up, the Cartoon Guide to Statistics. Because if people understood how to understand error and error bars and certainty and probability and all that, we'd be in a much better place.
Yeah.
We would be able to actually not be misled by there's lies, damn lies, and statistics.
Yeah, right.
And people can quote numbers all day long, but a number without the statistics behind it and the error bars and all that, and just what that number actually means compared to other numbers. So homeschoolers and anyone who actually doesn't want to get lied to, you got to learn statistics and understand just what someone is saying, or more importantly, what are they trying to hide. And right now there's a whole lot of science in the news, and a whole lot of numbers being thrown out. But yeah, so the Cartoon Guide to Statistics, absolutely crucial for understanding really everything. I often say that mathematics is the language the universe uses to tell us about itself. Because when it comes down to it, that's what's going on.
Yeah.
So let me throw that link up there.
Yeah, I've never seen that book. I'm gonna have to pick that one up.
Oh,
that looks like a good refresher.
It makes lighthearted fun of learning statistics.
Oh yeah.
And the Larry Gunnick, he's written some other like cartoon guides to this, that, and the other thing. So yeah, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I have to check that out. Very cool.
Yep.
Okay. So the next that I had on my list that I sent to you, Mark, was The Beak of the Finch.
Yes.
Okay, so it's gotta figure out what my camera is. It's this book here. Okay, so this is written by Jonathan Weiner, and honestly, gosh, I'm terrible with these cameras.
Yeah.
Anything
the green screen is playing a role in it.
Yeah. Jonathan Weiner writes really well to people that are not familiar with the subject material. So if you pick up any of his books, they're going to be easy to get through, but it's going to give you a lot of really good information. So this one, is one of those books that I had to read, maybe either as an undergrad or a graduate. I don't remember. But here's what Beak of it all blurs together. You know how that is.
Wait,
yes,
guy 20 years older than me.
So the Beak of the Finch. So what this is about is it actually goes into the research. So it kind of goes in the scientific method, right? Kind of gives you this background as how science is done. And then it follows these researchers, the Grants, Rosemary and Peter Grant, that they've been going out to the Galapagos Islands since like the 1960s. And they have tagged every single bird. They've taken DNA samples from every single bird. Like they know these guys forwards, backwards. I mean, they can just look at one and be like, "Oh, that's so and so. They're the offspring of this one from 6 generations ago." I mean, it's just insane. But what it highlights is how nature can start changing populations, because the Galapagos represents not a closed system, but a close to kind of closed system in terms of new organisms getting out there. Things are changing rapidly. It's kind of at a pokey pace of external factors coming in. And so it really gives us this really cool viewpoint or vantage point of how these birds are living and adapting. And it goes into, well, what happens in a drought year? Well, it changes the seeds, and the way that the seeds change affect the birds. And so you can actually see those changes within one generation.
So when you say affects the birds, are you talking bird populations? Some birds are more effective at getting the seeds.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So based on weather conditions, certain birds will live or die based on their beak size. And literally 1 millimeter can make the difference, whether you live or you die that year. And so what it actually illustrates is how natural selection occurs. And it's been documented they're still doing it to this day. There's still researchers. And so it's simply amazing. And so it's completely accessible, because a lot of times when we think of natural selection, we're like, oh, survival of the fittest. It is way more than that, in terms of what we think it is. And so The Beak of the Finch is a really good book at kind of illustrating how that occurs. So again, kind of a classic work if you're into science and biology and environmental wildlife, all of that. One of my best recommendations is this book here.
I never heard of that one, but that makes a lot of
good.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that raises the question: do they allow bird feeders on the Galapagos? Sorry,
No, they do not.
I would think that would totally screw up everything.
Or bird shot or anything like that. So
Barbecue sauce. Or
here's what's kind of crazy about it. Because it's the Galapagos, there's some birds like they're trying to catch. Some of them are super easy to catch because they're like, we don't know what a human is. And then there's some that are being stubborn. And there's a story in there where they get out of their tents one morning, and this one bird that they failed to catch is sitting right there at the front of the tent. And they're just like, oh my God. And they just kind of pick it up, tag it, measure it, and send it on its way. But yeah, it's a great story.
I guess all the other birds said, "No, really, this is cool. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
they're fine. They're fine.
They won't hurt you. You know, they need a little prick, but you're good." Cool. Yeah, it's interesting to think that, a millimeter is enough to change how you. That
Yeah.
kind of puts the human race into perspective and how successful we have been.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is stuff that we talk about in my class all the time. And it is crazy how, slight changes can cause such huge differences.
Yeah.
It really is.
Okay, cool. I'm going to take a minute. We're going to throw out to a sponsor here.
Yeah.
Wazoo Foraging Bandana. They got a sale going on right now. So if you're new here, I'm just going to click over to me. So, and again, the color, because of the green screen effect, this is actually much brighter and more colorful and so forth. But shout out to Wazoo Survival. Worked with them and Dr. Nicole Appelian to create the bandana with what we felt were the 12 most useful plants in North America for food, medicine, fire, cordage, things like that. And a special shout out to Wazoo Survival, because they are the ones that pay for the StreamYard account so that this show can be brought to you every week. So yay, Wazoo Survival. And then the other one I want to put up, of course, is the herbs Oops. Why is this not add to stream? There we go. Okay. Herbs, and let me grab him. So if you are looking for a herbalist to help you directly above and beyond what I'm capable of doing through Medicine Man Plant Co. But if you want a Zoom consultation and then a special blend created with you, you want to talk to Derek Bible, Ricardo Shilishali at Herbs. They're located in Cushing, Texas, I believe, but they can hook you up with all sorts of stuff. So shout out to them. And now until midnight, if you use Forking Weeds, the secret Foraging Texas greeting, you get 15% off your order. Cool beans, as they say. Okay, my turn.
Yep.
So, okay, I gotta grab this here. So, I was talking about fungus thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, of course, leads to Paul Stamets' mycelium.
Oh, yeah.
How mushrooms can save the world. This book is what really told me, damn, I gotta learn mushrooms. What they're actually doing, most people, first off, mushrooms are not plants. They're not just some funky sort of, they are their own creature. There are plants, there's animals, and there are fungi. And so, but the networks that they can create, entire forests, each tree and each plant tied into this fungal network. It's described as the internet of the forest, if you will, and it's actually transferring information. Like if a tree, gets hurt over here, it signals stuff. It releases chemicals into the roots. The fungus pick that up, and they spread this message to all the others, and then all the other trees start building up defensive type properties and things. Yeah. So, and going back to Speaker of the Dead, communicating with something that we don't know how to communicate with.
Yeah.
If anything, this book, I won't say it gave me nightmares, but it really made me think about, the role fungus plays in our life. We know it breaks down wood. Okay, yeah, it does a whole lot more. It detoxifies a lot of things. It goes through, it cleans up. It's a miraculous creature. So it's just hard. It's hard without reading this book, understanding how important fungi are to the world. And especially when you start looking at the numbers, of course, using statistics, the number of fungi, different species of fungi, blows away the number of plants or animals out there. So it's like an order of magnitude, apparently more.
Yeah.
And just tying everything together, keeping an eye on things. It's the brain, it's the immune system, it's the blood circulatory system of the world, and it's just pretty damn fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, without fungi, I mean, this would be a completely different world. Would we even be here without fungi? Right?
We'd be buried up on dead trees. We'd be.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
because there wouldn't be the nutrients. We wouldn't have beer. Isn't yeast the fungi?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah, because bacteria didn't develop the ability to start breaking that stuff down for a long time. So yeah, fungi are awesome.
Yep. And powers they have, and the way they knit everything together.
Yeah.
Yeah, mycelium running. Again, layman terms, lots of pretty pictures.
So you have to check that one out.
Yeah. It's really good. It really, yeah.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the author. I've seen some of his talks and stuff like that. So, yeah. The next I had on my list, come to find out, was also on your list. So I guess we can talk about this one together.
Go for it.
A short history of nearly everything.
Yep.
I recently read this one, well, the audiobook, so I listened to it last year. And man, I mean, it's one of those things where, through just, taking our science courses, we kind of get all that. But I'll be honest, I forget a lot of it too. And so getting back into that and just listening to it was such a fun read. It was so much fun to listen to and go back through it and just kind of talk. I was like, oh, this is so good. And it reminded me whenever you did your talk last week, I'm like, oh yeah. Just kind of following stuff through to get to where we are here today. Um, yeah, that's a solid book that anyone can pick up
Mhm.
and get a really good kind of timeline as it says, of nearly everything. Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, I swear, anyone who reads this book will be smarter than 90% of the planet.
It's good, right? It's good.
Understanding, have a better understanding. And I mean, it starts at the subatomic particles and the beginning of the universe, and goes to the creation of life and geography, geology, well, and
Yeah.
geography, mathematics, calculus. One take-home message, you probably got the same message, is a lot of those early scientists were wackos.
Oh yeah.
Holy moly! I guess I got to be careful how I phrase this. They might have been somewhere on the spectrum of of things. A lot of them didn't interact with other people very well.
Yeah.
Were but yeah, truly, this, if there was only one book tonight, I would say this one.
It's a good one. Yeah.
It covers everything. It's big.
Yeah.
I told my kids that, me paying for their college, they have to read this book first.
Right. It does such a good job of connecting the dots.
Hmm.
I think that's one of the big takeaways and the advantages of it is, whenever you take courses and you learn stuff or you get on YouTube and you read about this, you're informed and you know of these things, but sometimes just connecting those dots from A to B to C and kind of how progression occurs, I thought this book did it very well. Yeah. So yeah, another recommendation. St. County Almanac. Just yeah. Again, it was funny because I knew I was like, man, I know me and Mark are gonna have a bunch of the same books on here for sure.
But yeah, definitely a huge fan of the short history of nearly everything.
Yeah, such a good book.
Okay, wait, let's see. All right. So next one I want to talk about, and this one's a little weird. Not weird, but I'll explain it more here.
Mark, I didn't think we are gonna talk about the Kama Sutra tonight, buddy.
Yeah, we'll save that one.
Okay.
The knowledge, how to rebuild civilization after a cataclysm. So what this does, so I don't know if you ever saw the poster. I think they even made a bandana of the information you need to have on you if you get thrown back in time.
Yeah.
And basically what you need to bring mankind forward to the comfort level that you want to be at. And so the knowledge is kind of that same sort of thing. It tells you, okay, and let me just get the table of contents here, because that's probably the easiest way of explaining the book. It doesn't go in depth. It doesn't tell you how to do this stuff. It tells you what you need to know. So, the end of the world, okay, what happens? Then you have a little bit of period when you can scavenge things. But now, okay, what do you need to know about agriculture? What do you need to know about food and clothing? What do you need to know about substances, materials, medicine, the power, generating power, transportation? So if you want to basically have a brief introduction on how everything works and why it's so important and why we came up with it, this is actually a great book for showing you the world.
Yeah.
And why, the base bones of things. And as a person, what you really need to understand. A lot of people don't know how our world works anymore. They flip the switch, they get electricity, they think they're like windmills and unicorns involved and stuff like that. This goes through it and reminds you this is how complex it is in a simplified form. And so these are the things, if you want to understand how we can live the life we can live right now, this is what went into it.
I like that. I'm gonna have to put that one on my Christmas list, because I had just finished reading two different series, and they both kind of touched on that same topic. Like when you find a library, you look for how do you do agriculture, how do you repair these things, and
Mhm.
then you have the people that were trained, a mechanic. Well, if you lose them, well, now you're in big trouble because you've lost all the institutional knowledge, and that is something that we are losing at an enormous rate. How many people know how to cobble their shoes? Like, where's all the shoe repair people? You don't really see them anymore, and so it's those type of things when we start talking about like prepping and survival and long-term stuff that I'm like, oh my God, yeah, how would you do this? How would you build these things? Well, if you don't have that institutional knowledge, you don't build those things.
No.
So yeah, I'm going to add that one. That's a good one.
It's, like I said, it doesn't give you in depth on how to do it, but it opens the door and says, look into this. This is something. This is one of the critical. There's a lot of fluff, not in the book. I mean, in the world, there are things you know and things you can wait until the comfort level has returned to a point where you have some spare time. Then you can look at that. But this is what this is the base foundation of the first world.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. Yeah,
it was neat.
Okay. On my list next, I'm just going in the order that I sent, and I'll stick with the science theme. So another one that once if you decide to go the route of, hey, I'm going into wildlife biology or veterinary medicine or any of those science life fields, after you read Beak of the Finch, I would say jump into Wayne Cohn. Jerry Cohn. So Wayne Cohn is the Flaming Lips. Jerry Cohn is the author here. Sorry. Flaming Lips had a new album out. It was really good. It's called Why Evolution is True. And you could get a quick feel for this if you search the author's name on YouTube, because he's got a couple different talks. And basically what he's done is he's taken all of his talks about the evidence behind and how they've concluded these things, and put it into this book. And it does have some photos and images, because you can get not into the weeds, but it can give you some kind of details, and you're like, well, what is this that he's talking about? What part of the anatomy? It's a dense book. I say dense. I mean, it's not like huge or anything, but there's a lot of information in one paragraph. So if this one floats your boat and you're itching for more, this one is, I would say, the next step up. Because one of the things that when you're done with Beak of the Finch is you kind of have this idea of, okay, I understand the basics of kind of natural selection, but we know that there's more to it, with microevolution and all these different adaptations that we see in species. And he does a phenomenal job of going through the data, and here's the proof. Here's why scientists have come to this conclusion, and explains, kind of going back to the art of motorcycle maintenance, like, this is how science works. We're not actually trying to prove something. We're trying to disprove all the alternative hypotheses, and that gives us this framework to work in. And so that's kind of another thing that a lot of people are like, oh, you're trying to prove something. Actually, no, we're trying to disprove all these different hypotheses, whatever's left over, that builds the framework for the next question, kind of thing. And so that one is, again, it's a little bit bigger, heavier read, but he does a good job of saying, okay, if you don't know what I'm talking about here, here's why this is important, or I'm bringing this up, but you don't really need to know what this is, but here's how this has changed. And so that's another really good one. I don't think I read, now this wasn't one of the ones I had to read in college. I've got a separate one for that one, but that's another one of those really good books that if you know somebody that is in the sciences and they're, let's say, sophomore, senior, junior year, that's probably a really good book to throw at them, because I'll be the first one to admit, everything with like adaptation and natural selection really didn't click for me until about my senior year. That after I got all this, classes and everything, then it clicked. I'm like, man, if I would just had this freshman year, I probably would have done a lot better. It would have made a lot more sense to me. But yeah, so that one's really good too.
Students and read these books to your kids. After by candlelight because you didn't have the knowledge to
That's right. Yeah. Have these on hand.
and rotate magnets. Okay, so you're going to see a little trend here, and kind of the Brandon versus me sort of science approach. So
Yeah.
the next one is engineering in the ancient world. So what I love about this is it shows how many of the items we still use today were actually invented 3,000 years ago and really haven't been improved much.
Yeah.
And so, and how the Romans built the aqueducts and pumps and water wheels and and there's catapults. Ooh, you can't go wrong with
Yeah.
the whole chapter on steam engines. And even back then, they were doing stress versus the extension diagrams and so forth, and it kind of shows just how I like humans, but so I'm going to say it shows how damn smart we are. Even 1,000 years ago, a lot of times they think they're walking around in bear skins and hitting each other with clubs, and actually no, they had an extremely complicated and engineered lifestyle even back in ancient Rome. It's pretty wild. Especially the whole section on aqueducts, because not only was it the aqueducts, but then the piping to the houses and how they did the taxes, and you would pay in advance. You would pay for a certain size nozzle that would let a certain amount of water into your house, and that's how they controlled the distribution of water and paying for it. You bought the nozzle, and they'd come in to make sure you didn't swap it out or open it up or anything like that. Knock knock, nozzle inspector. There's probably a joke in there that I'm not going to.
Right.
But just Archimedes and all the stuff there. It's really fascinating, the engineering of the ancient world. I read this back in grad school while I was doing chemistry. I just found it for this is, what year was this? 1978. But I picked it up for like $1 at a flea market or something.
Nice.
It's like, wow, damn, humans had it going. I mean, if anything, if we hadn't had the Dark Ages,
Oh yeah.
we would have been on the moon hundreds of years earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. That is one of those things that if I catch something like on YouTube talking about like ancient physics, I'm all in, because you're absolutely right. We had this kind of preconceived notion that, go back 1,000 years, no, they didn't know anything. No, man, they were rocking out. They were doing some crazy stuff. I love I was watching some video where this dude lifted like a 2-ton stone by himself, and I was like, what? How did that happen? Yeah, I'm all in on those. I could watch a whole day of worth of that stuff, man.
And
That's really cool.
the engineering behind the Colosseum, and it had a roof, and it had elevators, and it had all this, and it was designed for quick. Everyone who was there, and it was thousands of people, could be out and gone in like 5 minutes. Traffic control, and then mining. The mining technology of the ancients was bizarre, with the pumps to translate the air and get the water out and all this sort of stuff. Totally just
That's awesome.
new plague and putting us back in the dark
I
age.
know, right? Airlines need to study the Coliseum then, so I can get people on and off the planes.
Yep.
Okay. Now I've got one more on my list, but I do have another backup if we have time.
We're actually kind of running low on time. I'm thinking of running up the stairs and getting another really good book. But.
Yeah, we're kind of going through them, but that's good though. That's good. So my last one that I have on my list, like I said, I got my backup, is called On Becoming a Biologist. Now, my copy is at work, so I don't have a physical copy in hand. And what's crazy is I just happened to go up to my office because our campuses are closed. Well, they're not closed, but sort of. And I saw it and I almost grabbed it, but I didn't. because it's my autographed copy. So the author, John Janevy Jr., he was my professor's professor. And this was one of the books that we read in grad school. And so I actually know this guy. And I've got a good story about him. But anyway, I see about him. He called me out on something. Uh, but on becoming a biologist, it's kind of one of those works where, again, I know I keep mentioning if you're going into this field, but he really kind of breaks it down like this is what biology is. And I really felt the Aldo Leopold in this guy. Like I'm sure that he is a big fan of Leopold because I definitely saw that in his work. Um, and so it just kind of goes through about like, well, what does it mean to be a biologist, right? Like, how do you see the world through a biologist's eyes, kind of thing? How is it that we approach these things? And so, after I read it, I was just kind of reaffirmed kind of all the things that I was doing correctly, essentially. And of course, I had the advantage of my major professor was a student of his, and so I had that kind of that knowledge directly handed down. So again, it's a great book, especially for anybody just starting out or not necessarily sure what they want to do. I would say definitely pick this one up because it kind of gives you that idea. Because there's a few books like I read one. It was playing the games that scientists play or something like that. And I started reading it, and it was more about like how to get ahead and you got to publish this paper, and if this person doesn't do this, well then don't put them on it and all this kind of. I'm like, that's not me. I'm not in the game for all that. This was more about you're doing this because you love to do it, sort of thing. um, and so I threw that on the list, and again it's pretty cheap.
Yeah.
But it's I don't think it's in print anymore, so it might be a little tough to kind of find these.
I got
um,
a link up for Amazon that you sent me, and
okay, yeah,
they got 11 used for a buck
yeah,
95,
yeah,
and then 9 of the paperback. So yeah, it's out there. So I'm
yeah,
gonna
it's out there.
pick this up. Cool. Okay, let me throw up another sponsor here. We got Uncommon Bees. Because don't forget, they are a small family-owned business, and they don't have what oops the big guys have as far as surviving lack of customers. So definitely a shout out. And of course, the now until 9:30 tonight, the Forking Weeds coupon code gets you 25% off. They have dozens and dozens of different infused honey. This Buzz honey is probably my favorite. I was the one that gave them the idea, but it's like a Monster Energy drink version of honey. So it has tartarine and the green coffee beans and a few things like that to open your eyes and allow you to start the day without homicide. So always good there. All right. I'm going to throw up a book. It's somewhere in the house. I lent it to Merriwether. And let's see. Will I bring it up here? Let's see. Is this it? Yeah, we're not. Okay, yeah. So The Night Country, by Lauren Isley. Not the gay books from we saw when we did the search. But so imagine a paleontologist. So he spent his life studying bones and history and what happens to, over periods of time we can't imagine, who writes like Ray Bradbury.
Oh, okay.
So there is a wonderful darkness and melancholy and hope in his writing.
Yeah.
That's absolutely fantastic. So yeah, this is a copy of the Night Country. So it's a number of essays he wrote for different things. And, going back from, when he was a little child, exploring the sewers in the town and the things he found, and, his things in caves and dealing with people he ran into out in the wild, living out in the edges away from society and so forth. And just a really fascinating, again, glimpse of the immensity of time and how it wears things down, but some things survive. It's really hard to explain beyond that. But like I said, a paleontologist that writes like Ray Bradbury. For those of you who know Ray Bradbury out there, sci-fi author, horror author, but no one else. Well, I was going to say no one else is like Ray Bradbury except for Lauren Isley here. So truly again, this is one I gave to my kids to say, you got to read this.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things that you take away different things from it depending on where you are in your life and how old you are.
Yeah.
And so my kids being really young, I wanted them to read it to help them understand me a little better, but also understand themselves a little better and to see what they were picking up and just kind of a cross-generational bonding, if you will. So truly a very unique book. Like I said, it has a wonderful and honest darkness to it, but not one without hope. So
yeah, I really enjoy taking fiction books and getting that.
okay, I will say this is not fiction. This is
Oh,
essay.
it's not.
No,
Okay.
not fiction. It is
Okay.
his. When I say writes like Bradbury, he's recounting incidences in his life, but there's very much a Bradburian sort of tone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, what I was just gonna say in general was just like I love how you can get so much out of fiction um, to reflect on kind of what's actually going on in nature. Um, the other one that I was thinking of that I almost put on the list, but I thought it might get a little too out there, but I'll throw it out there. Um, was by Carlos Castaneda, The Teachings of Don Juan. Okay, so it's been a while since I've read this book, but it was one of those, again, kind of self-reflection type books. It gets a little philosophical, it gets a little spiritual, and so it's just kind of one of those books that I read uh, because one of my botany professor actually recommended it to me, and yeah, it's called it's by Carlos Castaneda, but it's called The Teachings of Don Juan.
Yep.
It's the actual name of it.
Yeah.
And so it's basically this the guy that wrote the book. I forget if he was a medical doctor or a scientist. I'm trying to remember what his profession was. Anyway, he went and basically had this spiritual journey, tripping out on hallucinogenics. And he basically wrote about, the teachings of what he experienced and all of this stuff. And so it was just a really interesting book because it's a true book. I mean, this is his kind of account of all of that, and basically what he kind of got from that. And so I've recently been thinking about it a little bit more, and I kind of want to read it again because looking at some of the research coming out about how hallucinogenics, particularly mushrooms, affect the brain and things like depression, and all of these synapses and connections and stuff. And so I'm like, you know what, that might be worth a read since all of this kind of is coming out in the medical literature. Uh, but I remember reading it and it having one of those again profound effects on just kind of reflecting on life and kind of choices and what it all means. This is the question we all ask in our teenage years until the day we die, essentially, is, well, what does it all mean? And so there's just a few of these books that have really just made me kind of sit down and consider that. So that was a good one. I thought that one you might be interested in because it is this guy just kind of like learning about these. I believe he did some peyote and just a couple different plants and mushrooms and stuff. And so it was just kind of interesting. Um, the flora down in Mexico and all these places that's down there. So that was kind of cool.
Hydrocactus and mesquite.
Yeah.
A lot of it's funny you mention that because I recently was sent a book to review an advanced copy about the psychedelic mushrooms identification and using. It was actually very well written. It went into all the science, the chemistry, also the how to use them and the doses.
Yeah.
Very, very fascinating. I'll have to throw a link to that up. Okay, you were talking about fiction books.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Neil Stevenson at all? Or
I am. I have booked. I started reading Seven Eves.
Okay.
And
fairy type stuff.
I had to stop because I wasn't paying enough attention to it. So I was like, well, I got to sit down and really listen to this because it's heavy, but it's good.
Yeah, he writes big tomes. He's a hard science author.
Yeah.
And I love it. And so this one basically approaches the many worlds hypothesis and kind of pulls in the whole quantum mechanics, and maybe the quantum mechanics is tapping into those many worlds to solve these problems. Fascinating book. A word of warning. So in the back, he actually has an appendix that he covers the mathematics that the characters are using and discussing, like coordinate geometry and stuff like a model and so forth. But absolutely fascinating. This was the one book that as soon as I finished, I turned around, went to the beginning, and read it through.
Nice.
It was so fascinating.
Yeah.
The concepts of quantum mechanics and the universe and the brain and tapping into it. Because this is right when there was some theories coming out that the brain is a quantum computer. Has some abilities to figure things out beyond just what we think.
Yeah.
It was interesting there. And I'll throw a link up to that.
Along the same lines, you might like this one. It's a series. It's by a Chinese author. I'm gonna totally butcher the name, but it's like Krixin Yu, and the name of the series is I think The Dark Forest. But the first book is called The Three Body Problem.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Yeah. And it's kind of a political sci-fi. And
but it gets into some of the science and like if there are extraterrestrial, why haven't we heard it? Man, such a great series. They're actually making I think a TV series.
Yeah.
I forget who's doing it, but
yeah, The Three Body Problem, and
I
haven't read it yet, but it looks fascinating.
Yeah, I think you would really like it. I read another one called Ball Lightning, and again, hard science, just talking about like ball lightning and stuff. And so, there's a story to it, and trying to track down what is ball lightning and why does it do what it does. And so I definitely want to check out Neil's books because after reading The Three Body Problem in that whole series, I was like, I really like hard science books. It's really cool.
Yeah.
I like it a lot.
Here's another really good one, Neil Stevenson, The Cryptonomicon.
Yeah.
So it basically talks about cryptocurrency before cryptocurrency was a thing. I mean, Cryptonomicon was written almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But totally fascinating. And again, it's one of those things where it gets into ham radio and transatlantic cables and all sorts of stuff, but really fascinating type thing. Wow. Okay. I actually forgot one book, and I'm just going to throw a link here. The Dancing Wu Li Masters by Gary Zukav. And let me just bring it up here. We may go a little long. So what it is, the title and the synopsis are so completely misleading. But it basically says it's approaching quantum mechanics from the point of Eastern religions. It's not. It's all quantum mechanics with just the various the thinnest paint job of the Eastern philosophy. be over the top to try and get people into it. But the one thing that pulls into here, so best-selling author Gary Zukav opens a fascinating world of quantum physics to readers with no mathematical or technical background. Wu Li is the Chinese phrase for physics. It means patterns of organic energy, but it also means nonsense. My way, and I clutch my ideas and enlightenment. I love quantum mechanics. It was one of the few classes, it drove my fellow students nuts because I was just weird enough to grasp what was going on and accept it. Because the nonsense, when you hear a lot of the what quantum mechanics actually does and what they've proven using the scientific method, it's bizarro.
Yeah.
Absolutely bizarro. The takeaway is everything is connected. Everything is connected, and everything is connected. So behind the scenes, if you could peel back all this and see what quantum mechanics says, it's everything is one.
Yeah.
When it comes down to it, everything is going to, in the quantum mechanics, there is no separation. Everything is connected. And it's pretty fascinating.
That might be another one I have to put on the list. So many books to put on the list.
I know.
That might be the good one for me to start on with quantum, because I started watching years ago Through the Wormhole. Morgan Freeman was narrating. I did not get too far into it because I had to turn it off because I was like, my mind is getting blown right now and I need some time to digest it because it was just so bizarre.
Try it again.
I know. Now it's time. I'll read the book and then I'll have to try it again.
Yeah, but definitely. Okay. Wow. All right. It's 9:01.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, people, if you want to know how the universe works, read these books. If you want to know the history of the world, you want to know why we are where we are now, read these books. It'll help you bring together a better understanding of this miracle in which we exist and what we've done right, what we've done wrong. And by knowing both, it puts you on the path to try and avoid the wrong and do more of the right. So again, especially kids, these are great things for them too. So any last words from you, Brandon?
No, I think you kind of summed it up. I was going to just say on Monday after Thanksgiving, Cyber Monday, I'm going to be shopping. So I'm going to be posting some links of fun stuff that I find on my Bearded Hobbit Facebook page. So if anybody's looking for Christmas ideas or good deals, I'm going to post as many as I can find. Hopefully, I won't buy them all myself.
That's the Bearded Hobbit.
Yeah, if you just search up on Facebook, the Bearded Hobbit should pop up.
Facebook. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I should have that link. Normally I do.
That's all right.
Show. We'll slip it in. No one will know.
No one will know.
Yeah.
All
right.
No, this has been fun. I love doing these shows, man.
Yeah. It'd been a while, and it wasn't disaster related this time. So
I know. Yes, it's kind of surprising. It wasn't like the end of the world is coming.
Yeah, so asteroids and whatever. So yeah, we'll do another. I think we need to do like the sci-fi shows that we like or something like that. We'll figure something out.
Yeah, I got to finish The Expanse. I've read all the books. I've not watched on Amazon yet because I know you and your lady are watching them.
Yep. So now we're waiting for some. Like I said, just last night we finished season 4. So now we got to find something else.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone. Again, thank you for hanging out with us for an hour. I know there's lots of better things you can be doing, but we appreciate you swinging by and spending some time with us. Next week, I have no idea what next week will be, but on December 17th, very special guest, my lawyer, talking. She is a defense lawyer, and she specializes in self-defense cases. And so she will be talking about what you need to know legally to defend yourself in the state of Texas. So, and what you do beforehand, what you do during, what you do after, and all that. So I think that could be really interesting. An hour of free legal advice.
Yeah.
And not until December 17th, but there'll be other shows between now and then. Okay, I am going to end the broadcast and wish you all a great good night. I will see you tomorrow morning at the donut shop.
Mhm.
See you later. Bye-bye.